Let's start off. Welcome back, everyone. Today is module 3, where things will move slightly from being in the abstract to becoming more concrete in terms of like what specific skills, how do you practice those skills, how do you exercise, and so on. Again, my usual request: do turn your cameras on. Please feel free to interact as much. The more you interact, the more I think you'll get out of this, rather than it being like a one-way street from my end. Uh, all right. So if you all could, I assume you can see the screen. If you could join Menti, and let's do like a quick couple of questions to make sure that we're all on the same page, have understood most of the content, or like the information being conveyed is like being perceived along the same lines, and like just to get a sense for like again, get you to reflect, get you to spend like a couple of minutes thinking about the kinds of work you've done and so on. So I see, I think the number of hearts is the number of people who have joined. I'm not sure, but there is the link to Menti in the chat as well. So if people can log in, then let's start off with like the first question. I see 6, 7 folks over there, so I think that should be good enough. Okay, we can start by answering uh, just like if you managed to go through today's recommended reading, which was linked on the course webpage, which is this note from Jason Eisner, who's a professor at Johns Hopkins. And he's put out this note, which he usually shares with students who just out of undergrad research with him, typically in their undergrads. And it's a thing like a half a page note, which just talks about like what his expectations are when he works with a student. And there's a very interesting, I mean, he puts a disclaimer saying he strongly believes that people that he's working with, they work with him as peers and not as like a boss in like a whatever subordinate kind of like a role. But sometimes it just becomes hard to articulate these expectations, and it is good to articulate these expectations upfront because it just sets the right tone for like a working culture. But sometimes just speaking to like someone who's inexperienced and you talk them through with all these expectations, it may seem as coming off as being bossy or like whatever. It may seem like someone is talking down to someone, but that's not the intention. The intention is to convey these expectations, which are reasonable expectations, which is what most professors or most like researchers will expect of someone whom they're collaborating with and whom they're working with, no matter what their seniority. So unfortunately, no one explains these ideas to people starting off, and that's why that is like a very useful article or like a very useful bits of information which he explicitly lays out. Most of our modules 3 and 4, will in some shape or form manage to convey the same information. We've broken that down and distilled it into like smaller chunks, and we've added like a couple of things which we think are like probably also equally important. But it's a useful exercise for you to actually go through um, that link and really try to understand what the perspective from the other side of the fence, and also what little things you can do to get started in the journey. So, okay, most of you haven't, so I would strongly recommend doing so probably after this class. Those recommended readings and even the content on the website pretty much covers what we are talking about, but has a lot of links, has a lot of nuanced takes and like resources. So I would strongly encourage you to actually go through that content as well, in addition to what we are discussing and what we're going through in our sessions over here. Fair enough. So let's move on. Uh, this is your next question. Do you have a web page? Do you have like a public facing web page? It's a simple yes or no. If you don't, it's fine. If you have, it's fine. But we'll talk about this as well. So this is just to get a sense of where you are right now. And yeah, LinkedIn and all these are not public web pages. By a public web page, I mean like stuff that you can customize and like which is completely in your control. LinkedIn has like a particular format where you put stuff, and you can't really go beyond the format. You can't like You can probably write like some posts and stuff and link it, but it's not really convenient. So yeah, it has its own limitations. Yeah, WordPress web page qualifies. Yeah, anything that can you can pass around a link which is exclusively yours and which you have full control over in terms of content. I think that's precisely what we are referring to over here. All right, so I think 10 of you have responded, 8 of you don't have a web page. That's good to know. And these are, again, I want you to use these questions to think of these as little notes for yourself as to, and I'm asking these questions for a reason. These questions are being put up for a reason. Think of all these things as ways in which you can like actually, or like directions you can work. Link for Menti. Okay, let's put that link. Let me also put this on Discord just to be sure. I'm sorry, I don't know where to find the reading content for the modules. Wait, what? Okay. The reading content is, let me just probably open the site itself. So this is the reading. So this is our webpage. If you go down in the logistics page, this is the schedule, and these are your readings for that particular module. So today is 2 November, working with a professor, module 3, and these are the notes. Module 3 is, this is pretty much what we're going to cover today, bits of this and probably the next module. The YouTube videos out there, the slides to yesterday's and the day before's modules are out there. So everything is being updated over here. So this is your go-to page pretty much for everything related to the logistics of this course. Let me put this up on Discord as well. Uh, I think I'm putting it in the general channel, but yeah, we can look at that later. But whatever. So all right. So this is where we are. Most of you don't have a web page. So 15 of you have responded. Most of you don't have a web page. Okay, that's good to know. So that's something that we'll definitely address and work towards. Describe any one academic project you've been involved in outside of your classwork. So think about any academic project that you've been, which probably you may have initiated, which probably someone else may have initiated, than that you were a part of, but which is not really a class project or a class homework. And I just want like a brief description, like a one-line description. I don't care for what the exact description is. This is again to get you to think and get you to deliberate over what it is that you've done outside of your classroom, uh, in the academic sense, in the sense of digging deeper into any one topic or something like that. Also, my request is to just keep using WebEx chat because I have like a bunch of windows opened up in front of me. So I'll probably be looking at WebEx more. And if there's something I can switch to Discord and like blast it out over there. But yeah, I'll primarily look at WebEx. There were also some chats on YouTube actually, YouTube video, the streaming that's happening. So I should figure out some way to answer those. Yeah. All right. Let's one problem at a time. All right, let's. Oh wait, no responses so far. Yeah, you don't have to like be super elaborate. This is like it could just be like a couple of words to, or the topic of that project or whatever. But the goal again of this exercise is simply to get you to recollect and think about what this project was and like how many such projects you've done. Really, that's the goal. Okay, cool, nice, nice, cool. Yeah, this is great. So the kinds of responses that are coming up on the screen, these are the kinds of little things that you start off with. And this is like a numbers game. It's like working out. The more you work out, the stronger your muscles get. So the more you involve yourself in these kinds of like little activities, which need not be elaborate, it could probably just take a day or two. You're learning about like a new project, like a new library or a new something, and you're implementing it, seeing it for yourself. That's the way to get started really concretely with any research. So it's not some magical potion that you need to be looking for. These are the little things that build towards something more concrete. Interesting responses, yeah, yeah. Account aggregator, predefined database, also having like an OTP verification, simulating sand piles in Python, MATLAB program for polarization of vector beams. Yeah, pretty cool. So all of you seem to be engaged in like some little activity or the other, and the duration or the extent and the depth in which you would have gone may vary depending on like how long you've spent on this. But if you were to make this web page and if you were to list out these kind of projects, that itself should serve as like a documentation for like how involved or like how much work you've tried and how many different things you've tried. So someone has tried, let's say, AI for social good and like come up with like a recommender system, and someone has done modeling equations in courses. So these are at least seemingly at the surface two different aspects of or cover two different areas in the kinds of courses that you would go through, and that's great. And your undergrad, at least your aim ought to be to cover as much breadth as possible by doing these little projects and pick up probably one or two and probably go deeper in it, depending on how you feel and what your affinity is with that particular topic. And yeah, okay, we'll talk a little more about this. Again, the point of this exercise was to get you to actually think about all the different projects that you've been involved in. All right. Um, this goes back to the initiative bit that we spoke of yesterday, and I saw one of you had mentioned you had started like a club which was which was related to your academic work, and you're running this club, which is also like a great initiative. So think of like in the most optimistic sense, like what is it like that you want to work on and improve yourself on, and consequently, what is that initiative that you would take which will help you get to that goal? And hopefully, this goal, because in the context of this class, we're talking about like things that will lead you closer to like getting some research experience. What is that initiative that you want to take which will set you on that path? And these are not like, I wouldn't say solving one problem a day kind of as like an initiative, because sure, that is personally an interesting, like a very valuable initiative where you're taking the resolve to say, okay, I want to do one thing, let's say one problem from some textbook every day or something like that, which is a valid, like a goal to have. But I don't want those kinds of goals. What I'm looking for or hoping for out of this is some step that you identify as like a way in which you'll help yourself discover like an interest. Sure, I mean, if you want to go ahead and write out like I plan to solve one problem a day, that's also fine. I mean, like go ahead. I just want to see like what comes up. Okay, people are mentioning like specific topics, saying someone wants to learn about, I imagine, graph neural networks, analog computers for neural networks, acquire skills to pursue the research idea. Now, this is the so that's the kind of initiative which is not what I'm referring to. So that's way too broad. So this is acquire skills to pursue research ideas could mean like absolutely anything under the sun. So I want, again, whoever wrote that, why don't you like resubmit a response where you're forcing yourself to come up with something much more specific. It could probably be once a week I'll update a blog on X, or probably once in 2 weeks I'll organize like I'll talk about like whatever I've read or whatever I've done. So these are kind of accountability goals which are very well defined, tangible, and move towards a very specific direction. get involved in R&D of my company, especially in secure company. Okay, probably if that organization is allowing you and you actually have like a path into getting there, then sure, yeah, great. Organizing myself and sticking to a particular goal of writing. I so okay. I imagine and I hope this writing is like technical writing, given the context of what we're talking about. So if it's not, you should again flesh that out probably in some more detail. I want to talk to those who have pursued and ask them my questions. Sure, asking questions and getting all this again, don't keep it as like a knowledge consumption thing. So that should not be an initiative. Like I'll read 5 blogs a day. That's useless. I'll read like I'll look up like 20 SOPs a day. It'll give you absolutely nothing. So please don't have this as like a goal or like an initiative saying I will go talk to a professor once a week. No, yeah, I mean that's absolutely not going to help you improve your skills. By initiatives which will lead you closer to research, focus on like hard skills that you want to pick up, which will lead you in that direction. If you've not understood linear algebra, but you see that linear algebra keeps coming up in like the blogs that you read or something else, that's a valid like a goal to have, saying, let me understand linear algebra right, despite getting like a C in some course or like that course or whatever. So identify these very sharp pointed things which you think be able to read maths, linear algebra, and number theory, and not freak out and seeing a summation sign. Okay, that's a start. Implement a linear algebra library in C++, understanding how Dolly work, okay, identifying faster alternative back. Yeah, identifying faster alternative for back propagation. I mean, again, this seems like so broad a goal that you'll unlikely have any like tangible handle on how to get started with this problem. So these are like very vague goals, which fall in the same category of yeah, acquire skills to pursue research, or say I want to talk to people who have done this and ask them my questions. Very vague. So try to again, whoever wrote this, please attempt to like think about it some more. Feel free to like write like submit another response over here. I think multiple responses are allowed. So if it's not, whatever. I mean, it's for you to think. But yeah, this is, if someone, I mean, think of this as like an interview where someone is like trying to really judge your knowledge or like gauge your knowledge. And as soon as you give me this kind of like a sentence, I will start digging into like what your true understanding of backpropagation really is. And for anyone who's not familiar with backpropagation, I mean, it's just some differentiation trick. I mean, which is used in machine learning and stuff. So you don't have to know all that, but yeah, it's about like being specific, learning to at least recognize goals which are tangible and specific and moving in that direction. Stick to a particular goal of writing. Of course, it's technical in nature, subject area being AI and its application. Okay. Work on data structures and algorithms on a regular basis, understand probability engineering. Okay. 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 So again, those of you who have dropped like these big names of topics like analog computers for whatever and information theory and reinforcement learning and so on, uh, let again this I'll emphasize the same thing. Let it not just like be you picking up a course or reading like a lecture note on like let's say information theory or reinforcement learning. Again, this whole consumption angle of looking at things useless. I mean, it's gonna there is like an endless sea of knowledge over there which you'll constantly be tempted to consume. It's absolutely going to lead you nowhere. So if you had written over here saying implement paper X which tries out reinforcement learning, or implement someone's blog who has introduced reinforcement learning, that's a much more very specific tangible goal for you to start like working towards. Same here. Information theory, you have a course on information theory, take that course. But taking a course doesn't really like there's only so much to it. Probably say I want to pick up Simon Haking, or I don't know which textbook you use these days for information theory, but that's one of the standard ones. And like solve like 2 problems from the graduate section or something of that sort. Right? Those are all big they you see the difference between like mentioning a broad topic and being like super vague versus like zooming in and being super specific. So try to keep your initiatives and keep your goals to be as pointed as possible. Again, the whole point of this exercise, get you to think. These are the kinds of questions you need to be asking yourself and constantly thinking about, even outside this module and outside this course, and constantly moving in that direction. Moving on. A junior of yours has been recently exposed to research. They ask you if they should be doing a PhD in India or whether they should be doing like a PhD outside India. And what would your typical response be to them? So if this is the first thing they come to you, come up to you and ask you, what would you tell them? What's your piece of advice as being a senior that you would like to convey to them? So imagine someone in their second year or like whatever. They've just learned, they're learning about CS, they're learning about like research, getting used to the idea of like what probably research is, and they come and ask you this cool question. Uh, what's your sagely advice as a senior, which you want to convey to them? Yeah, you see like a mixed bag of responses already. So most of you are saying outside, and some of you have like seemingly unrelated answers. All right, we get the at least we get a sense for what's going on. For all those of you who answered like outside or inside or within India, like outside, you folks, you're being the same seniors, probably the kinds of seniors who spoke to you. And the whole point of this course is to sort of dismantle and like break away from these kinds of like notions and like answer these questions with more nuance, right? So what we have been through uh, the first 2 days, the last 2 days, previous two modules, is don't even think about these things. It's way out there, which is like need not be something that you need to be bothered about and concerned about when you're starting off. Absolutely immaterial. It's like saying, oh, if someone comes to you and says, oh, you know what, should I win the Nobel Prize or should I win the Turing Prize? What sense does it make, right? It's absolutely pointless. So when someone asks you these kinds of questions, you should, in general, just respond in kind. I mean, ask them counter questions, saying, "Oh, is it you want to do a PhD? What is research? I mean, what is CS research? What have you done? What do you know?" And get them to actually think and like evaluate what they actually know about like CS research. And if they don't know, then that is the recommendation you need to be providing. Instead of saying, "Oh, go outside India," I've read on like some blog that yeah, outside India has better infrastructure. That's immaterial, right? Pointless. Because they have no idea what research is. And you're giving them like all these like fancy romantic like notions of like what research is. And you're grounding it to the wrong concepts. And that doesn't serve anyone. It is doing them injustice, it is doing you injustice. So if it were me and going in the spirit of this course, uh, yeah, I'll advise all these other things. And someone says caste reservation, it's very unfortunate that this is the advice that you have, but we can chat about that offline. But yeah, ask them to first just explore a topic, find a topic that they think they like, and who are the profs, what are they doing, what the financial situation is, and then make a more nuanced call instead of just like upfront having decided that, oh, this is something I think I'm fascinated by. So let me start figuring out the logistics of, oh, whether should I do a PhD outside India. This is such a wrong question to be asking in the first place. And that is the goal, or like the key, hopefully the key message that this course conveys to you, that all these kinds of questions are just vacuous questions. It makes no sense. Unless you know what you're talking about, it just adds no value. Right? All right. So let's move on. So let's see. Uh, oh wait, what did we answer in the previous question then? Was I? Oh, okay. Wait, didn't we go through the initiative stuff? What's going on? So these were the projects. Okay, okay. I mean, okay. Sorry, I must have been. We can ignore this. I mean, it's the same thing. We went through this initiative stuff. All right. So this is again like a probable. What if they have? There's some question on the chat. What if they have a clear idea of what they actually want to study or work on? Then that's great. Then it's very unlikely that they will. Yeah, I mean, we'll get to that stage of like knowing exactly what you want to do. Then you shouldn't be having this question really. Then you know exactly who are the 10 people who are working in the topic that you're interested in. Some of them will be in India, some of them will be outside, and you will know kind of the pros and cons depending on like how mature the group is and so on. So it's a much more nuanced conversation then, and it is a valid question to ask. There are pros and cons, there are valid pros and cons and whatnot, and even for the like for a given topic between two groups who are like fairly active in like a given area. There could be some pros and cons in India versus outside, and depends on the area of what that specific area is, what the topic is, and so on. So all those are like fairly nuanced conversations to have with someone with between two people who both know what they're talking about. Otherwise, it's just like fluffy sort of political talk, saying, "Oh, this party is great and that party." Nobody cares. I mean, like they both may suck, they both may be good. What are you doing? That's the real question. So yeah, at least the context in which I'd asked that question was this is someone who's totally new, thinking about it, has been exposed to the idea of it, and then now wants to like figure out these details. Hence the question. All right, let's move on. We have 30 minutes past. So you've started research, you have a meeting coming up with your mentor, but you've been busy with your courses this entire week. And let's say you had planned out something to finish up. And yeah, what do you do? What is your uh, what action will you take now, given the situation? So you and your mentor met. Let's say you got started with some research project. Somebody gave you the opportunity to start with like a project with them, but you have your own courses. I mean, you're taking 5, 6 courses a semester, and you agreed upon some work or some deliverable, saying I'll look at this paper or I'll look at that module or whatever. And yeah, this meeting is due in like a day or 2 days or whatever, and you know you haven't worked and you just can't get work in. What is like how do you go about it? Is the question. Okay, some responses coming in. Most of you seem to go the morally correct route, saying, okay, let me actually just explain to them that this is my situation and see what they have to do. So there's yeah. So I think one of you put in saying I would ask them to just postpone the meeting. So here's the thing. This is like a reality that we all need to accept, that it's fine to goof up, it's fine to miss targets, it's fine to miss deadlines. All this is fine. This is it's just like everybody has like a busy schedule. But there are some caveats to that. So take up a research project or take up like a project with someone only if you have the time. And it takes a lot of maturity and like self sort of realization and introspection and coming to terms with reality for you to put your foot down and say, yes, I can make time for this or I can't make time for this. Most people, when you're starting off and you're inexperienced, you will try to overcome it. You will have a lot of enthu in your mind saying, "Haan, ye bhi karenge, wo bhi karenge, do this, do that, and do dance and do sports and do this." You can't. It's physically impossible. So be very, very sure of assessing what your like general schedule is and how you're going to push research into that agenda. If you're not able to make time, move out, move out of the project because you're just doing everyone like injustice to yourself, to the person who wants to mentor you and spend time in you and so on. So if you don't have the time, just make that clear and say, I don't have the time. Let's schedule this like next semester, over the summer, over the winter, whatever. But if you have made the time, it's still possible to like slip up. I mean, there are things that may come up. You have a assignment, you have a midterm exam, you have a final term exam, whatever, for which you need to spend time, which is fine, which is totally everybody understands it. These profs have also been students at some points in their life, so they will understand your situation. But how you communicate can make or break a situation. If you just end up in the meeting, have like a sheepish face, try to come up with like a fluffy sort of jargon, saying, "Oh, you know what? I read this paper and I was doing this and I figured this out, but you know, I think I'm stuck with this or something." They'll call your bluff and they'll say, "Dude, just stop like bullshitting me." So it is a waste of their time. Rather, if you know you haven't done any work, just write them an email, one line email, two lines email, saying, I've been busy with this. I don't think I've got much to report. Let's please postpone our meeting. And by next week, I'll hopefully make up for what I was supposed to do here. And like, I'll try to add in some more. So keep expectations. Then they will use that 1 hour to work with their grad student with whatever 100 things that they have on their plate. So you're dealing with a person who is already overcommitted. Your prof or your general faculty at like a research sort of institute will have 10,000 things on their plate. We'll have like 100 emails to look at and like 20 things are going on. So you putting this onus on them to figure out whether you're lying or not, whether you're deceiving them or not, just doesn't help the situation. So be honest, be forthright about like what your situation is, communicate, convey, and all this may seem obvious, by the way. This is like, that's why I'm getting you to actually articulate these things, because people's behavior of like what they exercise versus what they perceive they should be exercising, there is like a ton of literature which says that just like there is no there need not be any correlation between them. So I may say, oh, stealing is bad and talking ill about others is bad and whatnot, but what I do could be completely the polar opposite of that. And the instinct, and I've worked with like several undergraduates till today, and everybody, like with, I may think of exceptions, probably one or two exceptions. Everybody will bluff the first time. Everybody wants to like protect their ego, saying, "Oh, how I don't want to look like a fool in front of this guy and whatnot." And they'll come, they'll try to like talk some garbage. It won't make sense. And then I'll have to cut through and ask, saying, "Boss, can you tell me, have you really spent time on this? If not, let's just stop this conversation. There's no point having this conversation." And that's a very hard pill for people to swallow, but it's fine. It just gets work done. So these are again little things nobody will tell you about, and it is better you learn this in this kind of like a classroom setting where you're trying all your stunts on me, rather than like try it out with like an actual prof and waste their time and then just like irritate them. All right, so these are a few hands-on stuff just to get you warmed up, because the next two modules will deal with exactly these kinds of situations. Uh, all right, questions so far based on the exercise we have done, and like um, any other like general comments on stuff that we've seen? I'll like wait for like a couple of seconds. If not, let's continue. There's like a decent amount of ground to cover now. All right, moving on. So this is where we are in our journey. So at least the first two modules, we just looked at the big picture, why, making sure that we are motivated right. And now we are slowly beginning to ramp up and then try to understand even, oh yeah, someone's raised a hand. Yeah, go for it. I think you're muted. No,
Am
I
I
can't
audible
hear you.
now?
Okay, I can now. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure if this is the right time to bring up this question, but it's
Sure.
regarding the web page
Mhm,
question. I've
mhm.
always been confused about like what is a like how professional versus informal you can be on your web page if you're looking at like say research.
Okay, cool.
Um,
So mhm.
because I
Go for
see
it.
like a lot of professors' web pages and like senior researchers or just like grad students, and their web pages are very formal and like on a set pattern. Versus like if I see engineers' web pages or just people who like tech, they tend to be a little more informal. They'll use like more front end frameworks and they'll be a little more fancy. I don't know if these things matter or not.
Whatever works for you. It's your voice, it's your web page. Express it the way you think best expresses who you are. No one really cares whether it's like fancy or non-fancy. As long as the content, I mean, what matters is the content on that web page, and as to why you're using that web page and using that web page more of like a as a tool to document all the things that you're doing rigorously enough. That's really all that matters. I've seen like super fancy ones, even among grad students. And I think most profs and grad students don't generally have like super fancy ones because they don't want to spend that time. Everyone's lazy, but they know that a web page is important enough that people actually go through this information, and making it publicly available is actually of utility. So they just keep it like plain and simple. I mean, it's like some of the profs that I've seen is just like an HTML page. I mean, like absolutely like retro 80s style, like HTML page with like links. And that's fine as well. I mean, as long as it gets the job done, it gets the job done. So if you want to go fancy, go for it. Again, my sobering sort of reminder in all these exercises is it won't serve you much if you spend like 6 months figuring out like what the best front end technology is to get the jazziest sort of transition sort of thing from JavaScript if there's absolutely no content in there. So that's the only thing to sort of keep in mind. But we'll talk about web pages as well further down this module. All right, so uh, these are some takeaways from at least the previous module that some of you filled in. So my request is please do fill in those feedback forms that we send out. We put it out in the announcements on the Discord server. We also send out emails. The more pointed your feedback is, we will sort of we are all reading that and we will improve our content accordingly. And this is what people felt about yesterday. They thought, and this is the key takeaway that they think they're taking out from this module, from yesterday's module. PhD research is challenging and tough for everyone. We must keep looking for new problems and trying to find answers for them. Fair enough, yeah. So perseverance is like a theme that will keep coming up over and again. And it's more like research is like an entrepreneur where you are your own boss. You have to take these initiatives, and taking initiatives is like a concrete way to realize coming up with like new ideas and like finding answers and so on. What matters is what you do. I mean, that's probably very well. So, I mean, that completely reflects the philosophy that we're trying to convey. And it's just to break out of this romantic view of like what researchers versus actually getting like hands-on stuff. Some other sort of criticisms. The course is moving slowly. Yes, we do fully acknowledge that the first two are probably the slowest. And you would have seen me repeating the same thing over and again through like 20 analogies and 50 like philosophical takes and whatnot. And that is for a reason. It's just to keep driving the same message over and again. And the Menti test that we had today, or like whatever the question that we had today, saying, what would you tell like a person who asks you PhD in India or outside? Hopefully the content over the first 2 days, the spiel that I was like constantly like doling out, would have helped you gain that perspectives and like not made you answer like, oh yeah, just go outside because I've read it, it's good outside. Are outside kyun, where, why, what? All these other questions is what we want to convey to you, or at least emphasize, saying those are like equally important things to consider. And hopefully you pick up that perspective from the first 2 days as to what is the right framework or like perspective to look at even considering doing a PhD or like getting into research. Someone says, I want the complete roadmap for what the start looks like and what the end looks like and like what paper to read and like the full picture. You want me to handhold you like into that journey. Two comments. One, you should not be expecting me to handhold you this because there's so much variance given the topic, given like what you will work on, that I really can't fit it into like a template. That said, the kinds of things that we will tell you of like just how to like even write an email and think about like emails and like think about communicating with profs and think about like setting up meetings with profs and so on. Those are all broad frameworks which would apply across the spectrum, irrespective of which particular project you get into. So it makes little sense for me to tell you, oh, you know what, like once you pick a project or once you pick a topic, go to Google Scholar, look at some papers, read this. It doesn't work like that. Many different projects have different ways of starting off. Someone may already have identified a problem for you and they're just asking you to implement something. And that's a perfect way to start things. So I unfortunately can't and will not give you this kind of like a template saying, handhold you saying, okay, these are the stages. And once you are at this stage, then think about this stage and so on. That's not the purpose of this course. And another thing is, if this is the mindset, I mean, this is the like instinct that you're getting, saying, oh, you know what, someone is not spoon feeding things to me. That's also something that I would want you to start thinking about and start gradually snapping out of. Because this is fine until high school, where somebody actually exactly tells you these are the 5 things to do and these are the 20 things to do. And at a level where you're doing research and you're doing undergrad and you're doing graduate level stuff, you should be comfortable with slightly being abstract, but then like instantiating it to your situation and your constraints. So your goal should be, okay, this guy has told me like 20 things of like how to talk to people, write emails and think about this problem and think about that problem. What is applicable to me? How do I internalize it and use it in my everyday life? Is what is like the key to research, undergraduate studies, any higher sort of form of like education. So it is immaterial if someone tells me they have a degree in like X or Y, but they can't really like they've not picked up that skill of like taking in knowledge, internalizing it, and using it to whatever context that suits them, fits them the best. So that's again something which you should probably which applies to even courses that you go through. So even courses that you go through at the undergrad level, not everything needs to be like spoon fed. There will be certain, of course, the course needs to have structure. That doesn't mean teachers or the faculty use this as like a ticket to like just do a bad job at teaching. But the teaching needs to open doors for you, show you doors. And then after that, the journey has to be yours. And you have to develop the skill. The more you exercise it, again, it's a muscle. The more you exercise it in your coursework, in doing all these different initiatives, activities, etc., the more comfortable you will become with uncertainty. You will be much more comfortable with that entire situation of things being slightly nebulous. And that's what's actually going to translate when you do research, because research is like all these conditions taken like a notch up, where there's so much uncertainty, so much like variance and like all these things. You need to have seen those situations before and been comfortable with those situations. And the best way to do that is through these little acts. So yeah, okay, let's move. So this is again one of the questions that had come up on the feedback, which I think is a very important question. This whole theme of isolation keeps coming up, and is unfortunately or fortunately like an integral part of like doing research and just like a PhD or whatever. And this person wants to know what a good coping mechanism is. How do you know if this mode of working alone is like even fit, like is even the right thing for us? And this question of, are there any red flags which will help us decide whether we are made for it? And I'll add that in quotes, and have the strength to survive it. These are all very valid questions. I'll definitely bring this up. This is, in fact, one of the sections, even in module 3, if you go to the website, you will find there's like an entire section and some and a few resources dedicated to loneliness, and not only loneliness, but this whole notion of imposter syndrome, which we'll talk about. All right. So we've I think drilled, at least hopefully taken home with us this whole notion of taking initiative, train yourself to be a problem solver. It is slightly off the discussion, but I see many students are more advanced than how do I cope with this. Well, so just want to clarify cope. Okay, all right, all right. So let me Wait, sorry, cope with what exactly? What are you referring to? I spoke of like a bunch of things, and I probably am seeing your chat a little late. Whoever this was, yes. So if you could just like elaborate what cope, what you're referring to, that's fine. And Yashaswini says, can you elaborate the uncertainty and nebulous aspect of research? So okay, yeah, I'll chat more about it as we go along. Uh, so yeah, the whole point of then the key message behind like taking initiative is to be like a problem solver. If you find a problem which you think you can solve, you should go ahead and try to attempt to solve it. Even if you fail at it, that's okay. But exercising that muscle will just make you more confident about yourself or the skills you have and the kinds of problems that you can actually go ahead and solve. And you're training yourself in that process to think, internalize knowledge that you're like picking up from all these places and using that in some form to produce new knowledge or new systems, new information, new code, whatever. uh, this was a question that was asked, I think. How do I feel lagging behind? Okay, I'll come to the isolation part and like we can talk about this. What does qualify as being good research? So this was like a question that was asked in, I think, yesterday's chat or the day before's chat discussions. And this person asks, I mean, there are papers which target very specific domains and have practically no use. Should it be an out-of-the-box idea or something which can actually impact the world? I answered this partially yesterday, saying it's totally up to you. I mean, this PhD is your PhD. It's not your advisor's PhD. It's not like someone else's PhD. It's your PhD. Or like, I'm sorry, I'm making the classic mistake of using this word PhD, but whatever, like the research project or program that you're part of is hopefully you have enough autonomy. If you're starting off, you likely not have this autonomy. Someone already would have thought about something and you're like contributing some small part in it. And there you're being a team player. You're like the goal is the common goal of like making sure the project gets done and so on. And in that process, you're learning, you're asking questions and whatnot. And that's the right way to start. It's not advisable to just start blind saying, oh, I'm going to identify this research problem and I'll start going after it. What is much more tangible is probably hopping onto something that has already been identified and you just making like a small tweak to it, or you hopping onto a project which your advisor has already identified for you and so on. That's a great way to start. But yeah, I'll come to this point of like that should not persist for more than like one or two projects. And this person also asks, yeah, should it be an out-of-the-box idea or like should it have impact? Again, the definition of impact, assuming this is like a project that you're running fully all by yourself, is totally up to you. You define impact. If you think impact means like the world around you in front of you should change, pick a problem which goes ahead and actually does that. If you define impact as it could be something cerebral, it could be something like abstract as like a new theorem or like a new corollary to some known result, that's your impact. And on this point, in fact, Richard Feynman has written this beautiful letter. It's a small 2-3 paragraph letter to one of his students who had complained, saying Richard Feynman is a Nobel Prize physicist, very popular. If you don't know him, that's fine. Okay, whatever. And someone wrote to him, one of his students, after like 20 years, wrote to him saying, hey, Feynman, I mean, yeah, I'm just like so bummed about life because I can't seem to be solving problems, impactful problems like the ones that you have solved. So he's comparing himself to his advisor, who's a Nobel Prize laureate. So it's already like, and the language which they use is like slightly problematic in the sense that they're like saying, oh, you know what, you do all these cool things, and I'm just not able to do any such cool stuff like big grand problems, and I feel like an utter failure. And yeah, I know what you do is impactful and which the community respects. And unfortunately, I'm not able to do any of that. So I'm just bad at research and it just makes me sad. To which Feynman in all his wisdom responds, and this is on the webpage. You should probably go read that yourself in your free time. It's a short like email response, like what my email wasn't there, but whatever, like a letter with response saying, hey Kochi, I mean you really should not be so I think I made a mistake with you. This is what he's saying, is telling his student. I think I made a mistake with you where when you came into the PhD program to work with me, I gave you a problem. I had identified like some problem which was of interest to me, and I gave that problem to you, and you spent your entire PhD just working on that problem, for which you actually did a great job. That's undoubted. But the problem was not identified by you. It wasn't something that you were bothered about. Whereas I had this other student who came to me who had already identified a problem, which was like some silly problem, like it seems silly, where he wants to find out like what happens to the movement of waves or something like that. It's a problem in physics. You can model it using physics and math. And that is the problem that person wanted to solve. So he came with that problem in his mind. And I was happy to be his advisor. So I have the maturity and the physics tools that I have learned in all my experience. And I'm just nudging this person a little bit here and there to actually go ahead and solve the problem that they want to solve. And with you, I didn't do that. And unfortunately, I think this is my mistake. And this is like my shortcoming of like an advisor, where I didn't get you to think about a problem that you are bothered about. And this is what I've tried to summarize over here. So in the long run, if you're thinking of like research in like a PhD style research or an academia style research, nobody's going to tell you what problem it is that you have to work on. The first problem that you pick up may accidentally been like, it may have been identified by someone else. Great. That's a great way to like concretely develop your skills. But after a point, you need to fly out. You need to spread your wings and fly out, saying, okay, this is fine. This is the kind of things that are happening in this space. What is it that I really want to do? And if you're not able to identify that, take your time. There's no hurry. One life, live it well. So there's no point like saying, oh, after BTech, within 1 year, I want to do a PhD. Kya karoge? What will you do going into a PhD program? When you don't know what it is that bothers you, when you don't know what it is that you want to solve, there's no point, right? When you, it's just like a glorified time wasting tactic. So let this be your guiding sort of light. And this guiding, I'm not shining this light, Feynman is shining this light. So you could probably take that more seriously, saying that, oh, Feynman has done this or said this. So this is the key message, hopefully, with the whole initiative thing as to why even so. So as a consequence, why are these taking initiatives important? Why is it that you need to be like turned on like all the time and like keep looking out for like problems and so on? It is because you're trying to identify problems that you may be worried about and which you think you have the tools to solve. So it's not enough if you just identify problems. Everybody, most of us can identify problems. Like there are glaring problems in the political system, there are glaring problems in the road in front of her house, and so on. There are glaring problems in the education system in the country, and so on. Identifying those problems is not enough, but you need to have developed a set of skills or tools, this very specific set of skills or tools, where you've identified a problem, and within that bag of tools, you pick one tool and say, you know what, I think I'm able to solve this problem using this tool. And no matter how modest it is, it need not be something grand, it need not be something worthy of like a Nobel or whatever. If it is something that you have identified, and if it is something that comes out of like a toolbox that you have learned, that's essentially all that matters. That is research. And you will have a blissful time and you'll have like a very happy experience going through these hoops because you'll actually enjoy it. You'll get a kick out of it. It's a very adrenaline inducing sort of thing where you identify a problem, you go ahead and solve it, you get a high. I can't explain that high. You'll do it. You'll experience it yourself. You may have experience in different forms, like sport, math, whatever. And that's the kind of kick that you get out of it. And some people very thoroughly enjoy that. And that's what keeps them going. So that is the idealism or like the aesthetic that I want to convey to you behind like doing research and whatnot. All right. So moving on. This is something that we briefly touched on even in the finger exercises that we started off with, where we said you are in your undergrad, hopefully, at least most of this audience, you're taking classes and you're trying to manage research at the same time. And you, yeah, like need to come to this realization, harsh realization, that it's not possible to do 20 different things. You need energy, you need time, you need chunks of blank space for you to actually fill that up with like research and thinking about it and like digging through and exploring and so on. So if you're doing 3 research projects in 4 courses, un- I don't know, unless you have like this great capacity to absorb things like super fast, and if you're just like average, like most of us, you probably will not get much out of like either of them. So Gauss has this beautiful like Latin saying "poca sed matura," which means "poca paucity," which is few, but ripe, mature, matura is ripe. So think of like going after like few things, but just do them well. I mean, that's all that matters. The quality matters. Your CV and your web page may be filled with links to saying, "Oh, I did this project, I did this project, I did this project." When I talk to you, and I'm sure I will talk to you if I'm trying to like get you into my group, research group, or like a corporate job or whatever, and I'll just ask you, okay, what is it that you've understood out of this? Just explain to me. And then if you've not really spent that time understanding stuff and digging a little deeper, you probably will not have much to speak about. And that's like a sure sign of someone who just wants to play the numbers game and bulk up their CV just to make it look fancy. Don't fool yourself, don't trick yourself. This is not a game that someone is like constantly evaluating. You're doing this for yourself. And if you think you're doing all this just to like serve as like some signaling mechanism, and although signaling mechanisms do matter, but if it is purely for that reason, saying, "Oh, let me, do these four projects because it'll look like must on my CV," then you're missing out on the whole point. Because once you actually get in, let's say you actually manage to trick someone and fool someone this way, and you get into like a grad course or like some graduate setting or some researchy setting, what will you do? Reality will hit sooner than later. So these are our like words of caution, saying just be realistic about it and communicate it. This is also something where we fail massively on. Oh my God, I can't emphasize the word massive enough. Our instincts when it comes to communicating with fellow human beings are pathetic. The instincts are just so off. We are hardwired to be like absolute animals when it comes to like just communicating basic stuff. And it's something that can be trained, which you can like train yourself to consciously like improve. So if your instinct is, oh, let me hide away, let me not tell this person, it's okay, it's not that big a deal, you're probably doing it wrong. Be forthright, don't create any information barriers, let people know exactly what your situation is. It'll just simplify hundreds of things. And this is true in all walks of life. In any kind of like professional relationship, personal relationship, where you're like communicating with another person, where there is a common goal to be achieved, be it in this case like some research project that you want to finish up or whatever, keep communication lines open and crystal clear. And also recognize that the other person may not have this worldly wisdom in their head, and they may be playing like a skewed game of like being like not sure of like telling you things, and as a consequence of like them feeling oh their ego or like whatever them coming across as being fools and whatnot. It's fine. If you come across as a fool, it's fine. Nobody cares. I mean, as long as you want to go back, put in the hours and learn, totally fine. So yeah, slightly again, little preachy, but these are all like obvious things, which unfortunately in my all my years, I constantly see people like tripping up on these little things because nobody just tells it to us in as many words, and that's one of the reasons. But yeah, hopefully you can imbibe these and exercise them yourself. This is where we mattered. This is where we discuss saying your webpage actually matters because it's good instead of so when people tell you that, oh, I'm interested in like whatever machine learning, AI, and like quantum computing and like all these buzzwords, blockchains, and think of all the latest fancy words, my immediate question would be, okay, what have you done in this? And for you to be able to answer that, have some place to document that effort. It could be that effort is totally up to you. I mean, you could like customize it the way which suits your palette and style, but have some public page which I can access, which is not just like a link to like a Google Drive and like whatever. Let it be like a simple public web page where you can actually convey this information and talk to people and show people about it. So when you write a big email to someone, instead of like attaching like your CV, attaching links, 20 different links to all these 20 different things, just like in one line, just mention your link to your web page. And the person, whoever is viewing, assume they're smart enough, and if they're curious enough, and like if what you say makes sense, they will actually go to that web page and check it out, and then they will look at whatever they want to look at. You don't have to spoon feed stuff to folks, right? So this is important, and I know grad students who don't have web pages, which is unfortunate, and I know my own friends, and I keep telling them the same thing. So the stuff that I'm telling them, I'm telling you as well. And yeah, it's just a useful, handy thing to have in place. And especially, it should serve as like a forcing function. It should serve as something which will keep you accountable into like documenting like what you're going through your courses, ideas that you come up with, two, three little paragraphs that you write about like a topic that you've understood and so on. As soon as you see 10 different topics being written, and you'll feel good about yourself. You'll like, oh wow, I've actually written like 10 different things. And that'll hopefully like encourage you to write more. And that's how you become an authority in some field. And that's how, think of all these people whom you follow on like wherever, Quora or Twitter, or like all these social media platforms, they're all content creators. And that's what our nation needs at this time. That's what you need to be. And that's what will actually be helpful in making you like a researcher, get you to actually think and like articulate and receive criticism and like improve upon it and so on. So yeah, have this portfolio. It baffles me to this day that most companies just come in, like, even like software companies. If I'm hiring a software engineer who has never like had like whatever interacted with like public code and like done some stuff, and I have no proof for it, then it's so sad. I mean, I can't just I still don't get why like a data structures or like an algorithms kind of like a puzzle is going to make me believe that you're actually going to be good at software engineering. It's just so weird, so weird. It's like saying, oh, I need to construct this bridge, and if you can like solve this puzzle about like this whatever this what is the game which you play, the falling brick stuff. Damn it, I forget whatever the name is. So if the Tetris, yes. Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, as long as you can play Tetris and solve it like perfectly well, you are going to be like a good like bridge engineer or like a warehouse manager. You can optimize space and so on. It's like equal rubbish, right? So likewise, I mean, keep this in mind. It's like portfolios have, and by portfolio I mean like some place which actually documents all your work, has much more of a weightage for someone who's seriously considering talent. So it becomes like a very easy way to evaluate talent. So yeah, just let that stay at the back of your mind. This is also a question that I usually get, like, what area should I start off with? Should I be too picky? I'm like, oh, I'm not feeling it from inside when I take like a databases course. I'm not feeling it. There is no feeling, nothing like that, like nothing profound is going to happen to you. It's you're just being introduced to all these courses and areas. Some will stick, some will not. There's no saying how and why. It can so happen that some faculty may be very good at their like captivating in the style they teach, and that makes you interested in that subject versus something else clicks for you. Whatever. Everyone has like a different experience. Don't like overthink this, and just dive in. Just make sure that you're putting in like an honest effort and a sincere effort in learning more about like the area that you're diving into. And sometimes it just ends up being random. So and it's perfectly fine. And I think one of you had mentioned in the chat yesterday that you would like to learn more about like how I got into research and stuff. I'll save that tale for like another day. But I just started working like conveniently. The research group that I was a part of, we were trying to innovate on like some new area and new product, which hadn't been tried out ever. And as a consequence, I was like, yeah, one of the first few folks like poking my way into that field, which is like using like learning models and stats to build, like try to understand how programs can be understood and can be comprehended. And that is today blown into like a huge subfield within like CS and like ML and software engineering and programming languages. But at the time when I was starting off, it was just like a thing. I mean, and why did I get attracted to it? One, because I was being paid to like work on that problem, but I had a choice. I had a choice between like two, three projects, and this is the one that I picked. Probably because I had participated in the ACMI CPC, I was involved in programming and this and that, and there were all these other factors that made this like a good fit for me. So yeah, likewise, there could be you could be carrying your own baggage. So don't worry too much about like which program or like what problem you start off with. All right, coming to like one of these questions that I think a lot of you have some at least take on or like want to hear more about. Research is indeed like slightly solitary. It may not be solitary all the time in the sense that I've seen collaborative research efforts which go off really well. But the very nature of research, I think, requires some amount of like self uh, initiative slash problem solving involved in it. And you may not experience this right away when you're starting off because somebody may be just giving you like a small chunk to work on. But invariably, you'll probably encounter this. And not everybody enjoys it. Not everybody likes to listen to their thoughts, so to speak, in the sense that like being in a quiet place and thinking about some problem and persisting with it and like keeping at it. Not everybody enjoys it, and it's not that if you don't enjoy it, you can't do research. There are like people figure out whatever works for them. But one of the questions in the feedback today, or like in last night's form, was how do you make sure? I mean, how do you make sure that you won't fail, and how do you make sure that this is actually something that is going to work out for you? Unfortunately, I don't have any great answers to that question. What I would recommend is by actually trying out low sort of low risk activities like doing like a research internship or like doing like an RA with like a prof for like 6 months. These are the kinds of things where you're not investing like 4 5 years of your life. You're not like going through all that entire process and then burning out and then realizing that, oh, this is not for you. Do it in small uh, chunks. And that's why it's okay to start your actual research journey, go to a formal research journey in a research lab or like at a corporate research group or wherever, 5 years down the line after your BTech or like N years after your undergrad. And that just shows that you're someone who wants to think and you're someone who wants to make sure and you want to take that time out and you want to actually do a good job at like being sure. Just fine. And you don't have to be sure, like you don't have to like wear it down with like doing hundreds of projects. Um, yeah, I'm not sure why someone wants to annotate stuff, but I'll just go ahead and decline that. If there's something, feel free to write in the chat. Um, but yeah, I mean, the surest way to know whether you'll actually enjoy this process is just going through that process. So keep it low stakes to begin with, like a research internship. You could probably then try out like a master's and whatnot, and then you'll get a sense of whether you enjoy it. That said, you could also have bad experiences. So I am sitting here and like being super optimistic and telling you all that, oh, research is fun and I've enjoyed it, you will enjoy it, and everybody. It's not true. So if you are with like a, let's say like a mentor who is not aligned with your goals, it could just be a bad like interpersonal experience, and that will just completely ruin your notion of doing research. There's enough like politics that happens in like certain areas and whatnot that could turn you off. There could be there in any endeavor in your life. There are things that might turn you off and like drop your opinion of that like endeavor, and that's fine. That's okay. That's all right. And it's unfortunate if that happens with you, but that's just reality. Yeah, I mean, things can go wrong in any which way. So, but keeping those kinds of like adversarial outcomes as like the basis for which you not even trying research out is, I don't think that's the best way to approach that entire situation. So try it out and see if it is a fit for you. I think someone also asked, how do you elaborate? Like, can you elaborate the uncertainty in the nebulous aspect of research? Yeah, I mean, the uncertainty aspect is like you have an idea which you want to try out, and it may not work, right? And or you kind of have an idea but you don't know how to solve it and you're looking around for it. You've tried something and it has failed. So what I mean by like things being uncertain and nebulous is the fact that you don't know whether the next idea that you come up with, let's say you thought of solving, you're writing like some whatever image recognition or something of that sort, and there are some techniques which have applied it to some other problems but not to this kind of specific problem, which is slightly different in like nuanced ways, and you think that some other idea from some other place if applied with this algorithm, may go ahead and solve it. And you actually try it out and it doesn't. Does that mean there is no other way to solve it? Probably not. Does that mean you will find a way? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on like how like stubborn you are and like just making sure that you give it a good shot. But at some point, like my like, oh, this is from experience, right? So the very first project that I tried out after getting into grad school was a failure by like any stretch of that definition, because we had this, at least I had this like little idea in my head where we could have tried out something, but of course a lot of things went wrong and those are details. But at the end of the day, the kind of idea that I had and the results that I was seeing, they just didn't work out. And yeah, that's a reality of life. And am I beating myself about it, like and like completely given up hope with research? No. I mean, you fail, you move on, right? And that was a learning, saying, okay, next time when I do things, I'll be careful about X, I'll be careful about Y. And fine. Was my advisor like mad at me, saying, "Oh no, how did you fail?" No. We both look back in some of our conversations and say, "Oh, you know what? Yeah, we could have probably done that different." That's okay. That's part of life. Things may be more high stakes. If you're like working in a research environment which directly feeds into like a product or something like that, and if it fails, it fails. Big deal. I mean, like many product ideas fail and many product features fail. So let's say Amazon comes up with like a feature on its website and Flipkart does something else and whatnot. So yeah, I think they keep trying out, and that's the whole point. You keep trying out, something sticks, something doesn't stick, you move on. So that's the uncertainty aspect. And uh, how do I deal with the feeling of lagging behind? So I assume you mean like, yeah, there's now I'm realizing there's so much to do, and like, oh my God, there's like I've just absolutely not done anything. I've just squandered away my time, like watching some Netflix or whatever. It's okay. Don't worry. Don't. I mean, these are all the beauty about research and like this entire profession itself is these are all like marathons. Think of these as running marathons. These are all long haul games. So it's okay if you even take like spend a year of doing like arbitrary stuff. That's okay. 1 year in the grand scheme of things, if it doesn't have like dire consequences in terms of like finances and your like social security in general, it's fine, right? I mean, big deal. It's like you plan to live. I mean, we are all sort of being set up to live for like whatever 60, 70 years. 1 year is fine. So yeah, don't worry too much about it. What you should realize is most people who realize that they're lagging behind kind of just give up because they're overwhelmed, and that is unfortunate. And just doing modest amounts of work, just gradually chipping away at it, will put you much ahead of like probably 99% of the crowd in terms of like the seriousness with which you really want to pick things up. So don't worry about it. I don't let it not eat you up. If it does, and this is true with grad school and general research kind of like rules as well, it's good to have a community. It's good to have two or three like-minded folks who are going through similar situations, just to not feed off of each other's miseries, but rather be a support group. Like make sure that you all are like encouraged and energized. Find a mentor who is supportive of you, who recognizes your true interests and talents. And all these are hard. Of course, there's a lot of luck and chance and whatever that plays into this. But hopefully you're surrounded by people, the right kind of people who will like encourage you and make sure that you're grounded and you're motivated. And of course, more formally, like therapy, counseling, all these also work and like work equally well. Unfortunate, I think it's I know IIT Gandhinagar has a few services and stuff, but it's only now being recognized that oh, this need not be as lonely a pursuit. And I've seen like counselors and therapists who specialize for like academia and academia style sort of worries and like concerns. So that's why I mean this is as much as a journey about learning about like a specific topic as it is about learning about yourself, in the sense that this is like a reckoning that will happen saying, oh, I don't like this, I don't like spending time in this, and there you have learned something about yourself, like something true about yourself. So yeah, don't please. I mean, I can only tell this, and I know it's easy to say this. Don't be overwhelmed by the fact that you're like left behind and like, too far behind and whatnot. Just small, manageable chunks of like consistent work will like get you ahead of the curve like sooner than you imagine. Cool. Moving on. I don't know why I have this slide again. This is another thing, and we kind of nobody emphasizes this. We take it lightly, but unfortunately, it matters. It matters a lot. So your ability to communicate matters. Probably it's like one of the top two, three skills required in terms of like being productive as like a researcher. Ideas in your head are useless. You need to translate that into code or like whatever, like some theorem, proof, something, and then convey that to the world, right? And this comes up more often than you think, and this skill gets picked up more often than you think, or gets utilized more often than you think. So if you think you're scratchy in like your English and communication and whatnot, do something modest. Keep this as one of your initiatives, one of your goals, and work towards it. And it doesn't have to be, and when I say like practice by writing, I don't mean like some Shakespearean style writing or you're not writing poetry and you're not writing short stories and fiction. No, there's a very concrete way in which you can exercise your writing skills, which is like open a issue on GitHub and write an issue. And and I can't like I mean this may seem like crazy, but 90 I would say 95% of the sort of like youngish researchers that I work with who may have already worked on one or two projects can't do like a decent job at like expressing an issue precisely on like a GitHub's issue page. They're all over the place. They're either not precise in their information, they've left out information, so they don't have like a way or like a model in their head on what is a right or what is like a informative way to communicate. And this spills over in like many different areas, like writing emails. Like absolutely zero information in emails is usually what we are generally used to. Like it gives you conveys like absolutely no information. And that's a sad reality of like for most of us because we are just not trained. We are not even pointed to of our shortcomings. Like the very first day that I was showing you, like professors putting out like snippets of emails. Sure, they're just ranting. I mean, they have the right to like be sad about it because probably they didn't do it, and they expect much more from the people that are reaching out to them. But if you don't tell someone, if you don't explicitly point them to this weakness, they'll keep continue with the same sort of error, and nobody like tell them why nobody responds to their emails and so on. So please do focus on this. Don't take this for granted. It takes, even for someone who has great spoken English skills, let's say, for instance, you would think, oh, this is from the childhood, this person has been brought up in some like fancy school and as a consequence is able to speak English. Even they will horribly fail at this. So it's not your command over the language. It's not your like fluency. It's not how many years you spent like being able to use the right words and fancy words and so on. No, this is you have an idea in your head and you want to convey it with like be as precise as possible in conveying it and use enough words to do so. That is the real skill being tested over here. And you don't need any fantastic like out of the vocabulary kind of like English to do that. Simple everyday words, but expressing that idea right is a skill. It's a practicable skill, hard skill. It takes a lot of effort. You will be surprised when I ask you to like write a Stack Overflow post on some issue that you're facing probably or some on or any other discussion forum. And if the forum is inclusive enough, you'll see a lot of people commenting saying, why don't you add this as it? Why don't you tell us more about this? Why don't you tell this? Why don't you say that? Why don't you add more information? But if it is not, they'll just write you off saying, yeah, this post is rubbish. It doesn't make any sense. Please go and edit it. So please do keep this in mind. And how are we doing? We're doing well on time. We're like 20 minutes. So we have 40 more minutes. So I'll stop here. I have one more little exercise, but I'll just take questions in case someone has any thoughts or questions. So so now you see that we are getting slightly more concrete. So I'm not talking about like larger like philosophical things like, oh, think about this problem this way and that way. Now these are like skills which you can actually improve, which you can like work towards every day, little by little, and improve. And the best way to like improve, let's say, your ability to express technical ideas is not by reading technical posts. That will only serve you so much. You may probably read it and learn how to phrase and stylize certain things. But yeah, at the end of the day, you have to start practicing it yourself. Yeah, someone has a question, go for it. You can just unmute and speak it out.
Okay, so about writing articles and communicating ourselves,
Mhm.
uh, I don't know how relevant this question is here right now, but see, whenever we write an article, we need to feed in some visual examples. Suppose I am explaining something about CNN, and if I'm not able to explain about strides and the number of layers and all, so it won't just writing it in plain words won't have much impact on the reader. So how to have an article where you won't spend much time in curating all those stuff while maintaining the flow and the concreteness of the article.
Let me pose this question to you in turn. So let's say I give you this problem saying coming up with like a fancy CNN kind of a diagram requires me to learn, let's say, Photoshop and like all these other like tools, which I don't want to learn. It's probably not relevant right now, given where I am. But I still want to convey an image. And if I pose this as like a very specific problem to you, saying, okay, what other alternatives can you think of? What suggestions do you have? Can you think of something like
Uh,
your
hand
end
drawing,
result?
yeah, and we can
Exactly.
use a trackpad, like
Yeah, that's
we
all. You just need to hand draw. I assume you have a smartphone. Take a white sheet of paper, just hand draw. Nobody's giving you points like gold stars for like how neat it is and how legible it is or like how fancy it is. As long as it is legible, as long as it's conveying information, a hand drawing takes like 5 minutes. Draw it out and then take a photo of it and use that as an image. That's it. So don't again my whole like message through all these modules will just be focus more on like the content rather than how fancily you want to pad it and like sound and like use fancy words and fancy images and fancy ways to express that idea. But is that what you probably had in mind? I don't know whether this fully answers your question.
yeah, like I somewhat get the idea, like
Yeah.
but
Mhm.
sometimes drawing it by your hands might not capture the whole essence. So for
हाँ,
those times
ठीक
I
है
was asking.
ठीक है. I mean, like, don't worry. I mean, if it is just a drawing which seems to be like so critical to your idea, then at least I haven't experienced that. It could be. Do your best and put it out there. And if someone really has it, so here's the thing. So here's one way to also measure like whether the effort that you're putting into it is like justified, right? So let's say you spend 2 weeks or 3 weeks into coming up with this beautiful, perfect drawing. It's great that you've learned a new tool probably to come up with that drawing. And the next time you use it, it'll probably take you 2 seconds or like whatever, like it'll take you an hour instead of like 2 weeks,
Right.
which is a great skill to learn. And it is, in fact, if you look at the web page and if you look at one of the posts, I'm just skipping over to it. Graphic software is something that I do recommend. So, but I put these 2 stars next to it simply because it is a good to have kind of a skill. It makes it nice and legible, like you're saying. But even without it, you can survive. In fact, I've been like so sad about myself that I haven't like picked up like actual like Photoshop or whatever to be able to do all these pretty drawings. But I am like now a ninja with using like Microsoft Paint and GIMP and like these low tech tools.
Right.
And I've managed to publish it like all these decent places. So it's doesn't matter at the end of the day.
Okay.
So it is good to have when you have the time, pick it up. It's all these great tools to have in your toolkit because it's going to make life so much more easier later. But sure, I mean you can like start modest, start small, focus on the right things, and then move up that chain. All right. Would writing documentation for a personal software project help? Yeah, sure, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, all these things will help, but make sure that somebody actually validates it, like critically examines it, so that you get some feedback. Don't just do it in a silo where you're patting your own back and saying, "Oh, you know what? I've written this highly precise prose," whereas someone else who actually picks it up and tries to install what you've done and tries to understand what you've done has no idea what's going on. So just ground yourself to these kinds of realities. Put in an effort and then make sure that the effort is actually valuable in whatever sense of the word. All right. So since we have spoken a bit about, go ahead.
As far as on the subject of lagging behind goes,
Mhm.
I think not being in a CS program in the first place would matter a lot. So, like, what would you suggest to overcome that long gap? Like, I mean, there are enough resources out there to learn. So, like, is just learning and doing projects enough? Do you need to do anything more if you're like not even from this background originally in the first place?
No, no. If you're able to do projects, if you're able to do research projects, and if you're able to get some opportunities where you try out like research in like whatever modest ways, that's it, right? I mean, what is background at the end of the day? You have to use that knowledge and produce something. So as long as you have those tools, whether you derive that knowledge by sitting in like a formal class in like a CS course or like picked it up from like a YouTube video, it doesn't matter. So yeah, don't
I
fret too
mean,
much about it. Go ahead.
like, I mean, if let's say anyone wants to even consider or wants to hire help for a project, they'll look at the fact that um or like they'll look at a pool uh which consists of CS majors, right? Like I think that would be relevant. It's like
So what do you? I mean, what is the solution? I mean, like sure. I mean, what is the best you can do? Clearly, we have established this that probably changing majors is not possible now given your specific situation. What best can you do? Do you give up hope? No, right? Have other people done it? Yes. Are there enough number of people from a non-CS background doing CSE things? Yes. Does that mean you shouldn't put in an effort and just like say, oh no, this is just the game is too stacked against me, so I'm not going to try? No. So
mm,
I mean, if you have enough skills and you're willing to display and show those skills off, and these are core technical skills, anybody would want to have you on their team. There's no reason why they would say, yeah, this person is from CS or non-CS or whatever. In fact, like a friend of mine just graduated like with a PhD and like working in like natural language processing, and during his undergrad he worked on electric motors. Nobody cares.
mm, right,
So
right.
it's doable. I mean, if that is what you want to hear from me, that if you want to hear that it is doable, it definitely is doable. But then you know your constraints better than me. So yeah, just accept that as reality and move on. Don't fret too much about it. Don't like keep looking back, because once you have decided that this is what you want to do and this is where you want to go ahead, opportunities will open up, and you don't feel that you need to keep reconsidering the decision over and again after every now and then saying, why am I doing the right thing? So yeah, you do it, you take a call and you go ahead and keep pushing. That's it. Is it advisable to write for public domain research article aggregators like whatever in place of having our own web page? I wouldn't advise that. Sure, if you've written in these public research aggregators, just copy a link of that and like put it up on your web page saying this is my contribution over there. And hopefully you've done more than just like written in like these web pages like India.org or whatever. Because tomorrow if this website goes down, what do you have to show for yourself? Nothing, right? So I would rather you have something of your own than like relying on some third party platform. You could write in all these third party platforms. You could, instead of setting up all this time and setting up like a blog post for yourself, use Medium, use blog post, use Google blog post or whatever. Write stuff over there, but link it onto your webpage. Like just have like a link to all these pieces of information that you've written out. Because the advantage with having something like a Medium or blog post or whatever, you don't have to figure out the technical details of like how to host it, where to host it, etc. It's all done for you, which is great. but also have like a home for yourself, saying these are the 20 things that I've written. One of them is here, one of them is there, one of them is somewhere else. It just gives you more freedom and flexibility. That's it. All right, so let's do this little exercise, and this is where I'll keep this interactive, and we have roughly around 20-25 minutes. We'll continue this in the next session as well, but let's go through this. Why don't you take some time, read this email, and then we can discuss like, and this is the context is like someone has written this email to a prospective like faculty, and they really want to join their lab, and this is their way of like expressing it, and it's fine. And you see, it's not like a super long email. It's fairly concise. It is doesn't beat around the bush, and it has things going for it in its favor. But I'd want to discuss your thoughts on like this webpage or like this sorry this email, and let's deliberately go through this and deconstruct like what could be improved, like what is uh, not up there, and so on. So take like a minute or two, and we can like chat about it. All right. So thoughts. Hopefully by now you would have read through the contents of it and have some thoughts brewing in as to like what could probably be improved. So and think of it from your perspective itself. I mean, this is like a reasonable thing to write given your situation as well. Saying, yeah, you've liked something, you've been through uh, some information on, let's say this is my page and you're applying to me, and you've been through my page, you've seen some bits of information which you think fit your like interests and stuff, and you write me this fairly well articulated, cogent email. uh, what do you think is my most likely response, or like how would I receive it? So think of it from that perspective. Anyone wants to chip in with like thoughts on what could be improved perhaps, or like what is missing? Just yeah, feel free to unmute yourself and chat.
So when I read this email, so one thing that comes to my mind is probably since I mentioned that I have read several publications, so I could have mentioned something more concrete, from those publications. It's right now it's very just to mention that I have read several publications and like it. But I think if I was writing it, I probably would have tried to include something from those publications that what actually interested me.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Did anyone else, and we'll discuss this in some more detail. Anyone else had anything else to chip in with? Any other thoughts? Any other comments? What are what are the? Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that in the second paragraph, like these questions about the how often the members meet the advisors and all that, they like quite seem irrelevant for the first time person is writing an email to like to inquire about the this information of the lab. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Fair. That's a valid observation. Anyone wants to add to that? Any other thoughts? And let's start with the very first line itself. It says greetings. Um, and as soon as I look at the an email of this sort, uh, my first question is this a stock email? Have you just copy pasted this and sent it to like 50,000 people, me being one of them? That's the first question I would ask, because that's a sure short indicator of like having like absolutely no personalized bit of information saying just greetings, hello, hi, whatever. So if you're writing to me, let me know how, like make sure that you convey to me that you are actually personalizing this enough. Merely reading research articles is not enough. We need to be more precise. Other information asked in the second and third questions are mostly available in the webpage of the research group. So no need to ask, yeah, specifically how often and what the expectations, yeah, what would the profile of a potential candidate. Conducting research on deep learning and application could be a little more elaborative. Okay, yeah, fair enough, fair enough. So okay, let's I think I've definitely got a web page on works carried out as explained in this session. Fair, yep. So I think you're all like latching onto the right ideas here. So let's look at this carefully. So greetings, that's problematic. I am a research engineer. Great. I look forward to applying for the PhD program. Okay. I'm writing to you to inquire about the information on your lab. I have been conducting research on deep learning. Wait, is my camera uh, is my camera on? Can you all see me? Could you just like mention yes or okay, cool. Thanks. Because I got a message saying my camera was problematic. Okay. I'm writing to inquire. I have been conducting research on deep learning and its application. This is so broad a statement. This is like saying I'm conducting research in computer science. What information have you conveyed so far in the first, like let's say 4 lines? I have absolutely gained nothing besides the fact that you're already employed and you seem to be employed in like a research kind of role, which again doesn't tell me much. I have been conducting research on deep learning and application, zero information. I have read several publications for your lab, and I think the research being carried out at the lab interests me enough to pursue a PhD. Wrong answer. Just not the way you want to learn more. So, what are the expectations of advisor? What should the potential profile willing for like a candidate be who wants to join this lab? So, in a sense, what they're asking is, what do you expect out of like a PhD student, or like who's applying to your program? And this is all in the context of PhD, but the same thing applies for any research job. So if you want to apply to like a research role in like a corporate research group or anything, this kind of like a cover letter will likely just not work for you. So my camera is kind of acting funny, but hopefully my screen is visible, which is more important than my face, at least in this context. Could someone just confirm whether the screen being shared is visible to you all? Just probably like a yes or no. Okay, cool. Thank you. All right. So I think we'll just go ahead with the screen and like the camera is off. That's okay. Yeah, my camera seems to have stopped working midway. That's okay. So you should not be asking like a faculty what the potential candidate's profile ought to be like. That's what the purpose of this course is for. What we are trying to tell you is you need to have known, done some work, figured something out, figured a problem that bothers you, and then you're going and talking to like a person who you think works in that same area and have something in common. So yeah, again, zero information. I've read. What paper have you read? Do you have anything informative to say about it? Do you have anything uh, interesting to talk about it? Nothing. I wanted to learn more about the lab and its members, especially how often do you meet with the advisor and so on. Why is this relevant? What are you trying to get? Why are you asking me information when you should be telling me more information? That doesn't make any sense, right? Please find attached is my CV for your reference and be happy to answer any further questions you may have. You're writing to me, you're like asking like some generic questions, and then what questions do you want me to ask you? But unfortunately, the reality is like this is one of the better off emails that usually come into the inboxes of like most of these professors or like these labs and lab PIs and heads. And this is where we're like nobody's stopping us and telling us like think for 2 minutes before you send before you hit send and ask yourself what is the purpose of sending this email. Nobody is ever going to read this one email from you and be so convinced and so fall in love with you that they'll say, oh, you know what, you are my chosen one, come over, start working with me tomorrow, right now. That's not going to happen. If the best way, at least the most organic way that I can think of, is you write to someone, they and you ask them like a pointed question about the work they've done. You start a conversation, and that conversation eventually evolves into something like, oh, probably, yeah, why don't you come over and we can try some ideas out. That is the most natural way for things to happen. And that's what PhD advisors or like, let's say research members, they find most joy, and probably that's the best fit that they could usually hope for. And unfortunately, if I don't have the stats, but probably less than 1% would try something out like this, would try out what we are teaching to you in this course, saying, think about it, figure out an area, do your own homework, and then go ahead and like talk to people about your problem. Less than 1% do this. So imagine just by doing something which seemingly looks simple, but it is, as we have realized, it's not simple. It's a lot of work in the back end for you to like come up with something constructive and like pointed and informative. Yeah, so that's why faculty end up looking for other parameters and other signals like, oh, what is your background? What course have you done? What is your GPA? What college do you come from? These are all desperately trying to answer as what else can I look at, which will serve as like a replacement signal for this person's capacity to do research. And that's a very flawed way to go ahead and like address that problem. Because someone with the best pedigree from the best institute, from the best college, with the best grades, may still end up being very, very bad at research. And that's the reality of it. So please keep this in mind. I mean, whenever you write an email and you reach out to someone, ask yourself 10 times before you hit that send button as to whether that what you are trying to convey or what you want to get out of that email, is there anything concrete? Because 95% of the times you will not unfortunately have anything concrete to say. It'll just be like, oh, I'm excited about this, can you hire me? No, it's very unlikely going to work. Let's move on with like another example now. Let's and these are all, by the way, real emails. I mean, these are all emails that friends have received, I have received, we have all received over like the last few years. And it doesn't mean to like berate them or tell them, and I'm not using this as an example to make a fool out of them. This is as I have sent these kinds of emails as well. And that's clearly just points to like a lack of maturity, training. Nobody's telling us to do any better. And as a consequence, I'll see some senior doing it. They'll forward that template to me. I will make that change and I'll also send this. And nothing gets done. I mean, it's pointless, absolutely pointless. Okay, why don't you spend like another like 2-3 minutes just going through this? This is more recent. It has got COVID in it and whatnot. So being more specific about research topic and more informative I've read conveys more and makes the prof more interested in me. Again, the goal is not to get the prof fall in love with you, but rather find something common to talk about. So if there is something that you've actually identified, which you think is a problem, is a question, which has not been answered in the paper, but you would like to see if whether it may be a stupid question, it may be a silly question. In the professor's from the professor's vantage or from the perspective of the senior person, the mentor's viewpoint, it may be like a very trivial kind of question, but they will still answer it because clearly it shows that you've thought about it. You've thought about it. You want to ask a very specific question about a very specific concept or a paper that they've written about. They'll be more than happy to answer such questions. The busiest professor will take time out to answer like 2, 3 lines, try to answer that kind of a question. It just shows, and it can't be like super like obvious saying, oh, in this paper, what are the results? I mean, what are the results? Go read the paper. That's what the paper is about. But if you have someone, if you have like a nuanced take, if you're saying, yeah, you know what, I looked at these results, but they don't kind of make sense because this other paper tried like a similar experiment, but in some other setting, and they don't see these results. Aren't those two conditions the same thing technically, conceptually? Because if it is, then your result should match, but it doesn't match. Why do you think it is? And these are my thoughts. Now, that is the kind of email that I would love to see as a PI, as a professor, as someone who's like mentoring students and want people to join my group. Because you have done the homework of identifying some specific thing and you're able to use bits of knowledge from all these different sources and come up with some informative, come up with like new information, come up with something constructive and say, oh, this looks right, but this doesn't, I can't explain why this result is this way because according to what I know from these other works, something doesn't fit or something like that. Or there could be some glitch in the proof saying, oh, this one corollary doesn't seem to be used right, because if you do, then this assumption doesn't hold. And I think what you meant was this, probably it's a typo. So yeah, all these things show that you've actually engaged with the work, and there is no shortcut to this. There's absolutely no shortcut to this. And of course, the next question you can ask me is, how do I know like what these works are and whatnot? It takes time. The same ingredients that I've sprinkled around all these across these 3 modules, saying start with your courses, find someone. Hopefully, you find a research internship to start this entire journey, bootstrap this journey. Once you do, you get some more information, and yada yada yada. You go ahead. You go progress that trajectory. All right, so let's do another example. This is slightly more specific than the previous one, if you'll notice. But let me get your thoughts again on like what you think. And yeah, just use all this information that we have discussed so far, and let me know. Again, take like a minute or two, and we can discuss specifics. So thoughts as you're reading it, any first impressions? Yeah, sir, madam. I mean, really, if you're writing to me and you believe that you've actually like read through my work, you don't know I'm like sir or madam, as it is that like ambiguous. And you don't have to say, just say hi, whatever, hi, prof X, or just hi X, it's fine. If you drop the word prof or doctor, nobody's going to take it on the, hopefully they don't take it on the ego. Most people I know, they don't care. It's the content that matters. Link to the papers. I have worked on multiple research topics like, yeah, this line, anyone can say this. Someone who has no idea what these topics are can also like just casually just mention these lines, right? What's the point? I will also add, I have worked on multiple research topics like whatever, cryptography, this, organic chemistry, and like fuel science, and this, and whatnot. And what information are you conveying? What is the goal? What is the goal of this entire like email? The goal is somewhere over here. Uh, in fact, funnily, the goal is also not mentioned here. I had some industry, but since I wanted to pursue research, since my research internship got cancelled, I'm very much in need of an internship. This is your goal. Your goal is tucked away in the middle of these two paragraphs, where it's not clear what is it that you want out of me, and you're giving me zero information to play with, quite literally. So I don't really care whether you had a past offer in like a US university or a UK university, immaterial, right? I really don't care. What has that got to do with you working with me? And yeah, you haven't really mentioned anything about like anything specific. These are just topics. Throwing around these words just like doesn't make any like add any information whatsoever. And you will be surprised. You will be surprised that people end up wasting hundreds and thousands of dollars and like giving GRE and writing all these applications to all these multiple different schools. And these are the kinds of statements that they write. And these are exactly the kinds of statements that they want to like reject. Saying the person just doesn't know what research is, then why are they applying to a PhD program? You may have done something. What have you learned? How is that relevant to what I work on? That is the insight that I want from you. You're not a code monkey where you've just like implemented some like algorithm or some repository or some whatever, and you say that, oh, I have done this. It's useless. And all this is again useless in the context of like, sure, this you are in like an unfortunate situation. My sympathies are with you, but that doesn't really give me information to work with, right? And working with various professors, I have developed strong research experience and will surely be an asset to your lab. Really? ऐसे तो हर कोई मतलब anyone will say this, right? It's in their interest to say this. I will be an asset to your lab. Don't tell me this. Show me work which will make me conclude that yeah, you will probably be an asset in my lab, right? So I just want to get a sense. I mean, is everyone like getting a sense of like how once a friend of mine was said that one professor was telling me pass only those students who she could learn something new. This was in response to a question why I have a few candidates pass. Yes, because the fact. No, not really. No, no, no. I mean, they're not looking for anything new or anything of that sort. So it's just like, can I have a conversation with you? That's it. That's really the end goal. Can I have a meaningful conversation about my work with you? And if I can't, there's probably a lot more homework that you need to do before you consider like a much more longer investment in like research with me. That really is the whole point of like sharing these kinds of little snippets with you. And don't be under this illusion that, oh, this won't happen to you. These are like absolute like noobs who are making this kind of mistake. I won't make this kind of mistake. That's not true. You will very likely make the same kinds of mistake if you're not like conscious, if you haven't practiced it, if you haven't like tried it out like a few times, you will very likely make the same kinds of mistakes. All right, so we have like 2 minutes to the hour, so let us stop here. I probably just had like one other email and like I would probably have spoken about things. So here's what we'll do. I've spoken with this about with Neil as well. Uh, let's not have class tomorrow, and instead, what we'd rather you work on is this exercise. So we have a take-home like exercise for you. Yeah. So I'm just looking at the chat and it says, so we need to make the PI motivated enough to ignite like a conversation. Yeah. So have like a meaningful conversation, which you can probably talk about something in common about the work that they have done. And it's only then through those conversations that you build up like some respect for each other, and there's some like maturity in like figuring out a problem. That's the goal. That's really the aim. Otherwise, it's all hot air. It's all like fluff. Saying I'm good at this and I've done this and I'll do this. I don't care. Nobody cares. All right, so I don't have much time. If there are any other questions, feel free to post it on Discord, and I'll be happy to continue this conversation there. What we'll do tomorrow is we won't meet tomorrow, but instead, in the same time, what I strongly recommend is you use this time or you use extra time, I don't care, but you actually attempt this little homework exercise that we have given you. And this will take you a good 1 or 2 hours. So I would much rather you use those 2 hours in like answering these questions rather than yeah, it is essential to mention your past work and skills, but there is a way to do it. That's the thing. So you will mention stuff that you've done, but you don't have to mention like the whole story of your life until that point in time. So you will say, oh, just start right off saying, oh, hi, XXX. I read your paper on YYY. I have worked on ZZZ, and this is what I find. That's a much more quick to the point. It tells me exactly what you want to convey. Rather than, oh, I had COVID and my family had COVID and we did this and we did that and I don't have an offer now. So that's why, you know what, I want to work with you. No, doesn't make sense, right? Imagine, put this from your perspective of like whether you want to invest your time, given you already have all these 100 things going on in your life, whether you want to invest your time in such stuff. All right, so let me again, let's use this as a hard stop. I'll put out the link to this exercise. It's on the web page. It's it's mentioned in today's module with the resources with today's module, and it's a short exercise. It'll get you again to think. It'll get you to actually put these concepts to test and will actually make you work. And I sincerely hope you actually spend these 2 hours tomorrow instead of like sitting through this video. I would recommend like actually using these 2 hours to solve, or not solve, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm using all these typical homework jargon. Answer these questions for yourself and submit it in the link that has been mentioned below. And these are all things again which will make you just think about stuff. And of course, in the session when we meet on today's I think Wednesday, so when we meet on Friday, we'll definitely talk more about your responses and we'll fill in some of the gaps. I have told you certain things on like until like how to probably think about communicating with folks and writing emails and so on. But we'll close the loop and talk more about it. So let me know if anyone has any questions. We'll drop this link on like Discord and all these other platforms, your email and stuff. So we are not meeting tomorrow, Thursday, but we'll meet on Friday. Until then, if you have any questions, if you want to discuss answers, if you have any doubts, if you have whatever, feel free to use the Discord channel. I know there are sub channels like day 1, day 2, day 3. You could ignore that. If you don't want to use it, use the general channel, use whatever. But feel free to use that Discord channel and get a discussion going. And this is not really an exercise in the do we actually need to write out an email to that professor? No. Oh no. Don't write an email out to that professor. Write that email and submit the draft of that email on this link. The last day of the course is Saturday. Yes, that's right. But thanks, Satyam. I'll actually go ahead and clarify that. I'll edit this text. Please don't spam all these helpless professors who will have no idea what you're talking about. So yeah,
I
I'll clarify that again.
started an email by saying that Shashank asked us to do this.
And they'll be like, who is this Rafim? Let's keep
Shashank's
it short.
website also and his Twitter when you do that.
Oh yeah. So then that'll like pretty much like pin me down. Yep, I'm the culprit.
Yes. All right, that's
So
the main prank in
that's
this course, but yeah, okay.
the last day of the course. Yeah, someone's asking is indeed Saturday, but we'll see. I mean, we have it officially planned till Saturday, and we have 5 days of content. By when we meet on, we're not going to meet Thursday. We're going to meet on Friday. By Friday, I think we mostly cover all the core sort of skills and stuff that we want to cover, and we can use Saturday just to chat about stuff and like any other like questions that you may have about like specific anything specific. Does this assignment carry any marks? If you're registered in this course, I'll definitely use this. We'll use this for like your credit or assigning a credit. But again, you're thinking about it this the wrong way. Don't think about it in terms of like, am I going to do a good job or a bad job? The whole point of like floating this out is for you to go through that exercise of actually writing some draft and seeing how articulate you are, and use this as a test to gauge yourself as to where you are and spot like gaps which you can use to improve yourself. So please, I mean, this is not like some course where I'll fail or we'll fail you and you'll get some marks or not get some marks. So think about these as like exercises which you should have done probably after listening to this course. These are natural things that you'll want to do. We're just forcing you to do it because that's the advantage of sitting through a course. So we are 4 minutes past. I think that puts us exactly on like 2 hours. So I think we're doing good on time. So all right, that's pretty much what I had to convey. Neil, if there's anything else or like anyone has any other parting thoughts.
No, nothing specific from me except just to remind folks that we'll meet day after as opposed to tomorrow. This is sort of you can choose to do the assignment anytime you want. Of course, it doesn't have to be during exactly this time. But we look forward to receiving. I think I mean, submitting it anytime before the next session should work. But if you're looking for feedback, it'll be nice to give
Absolutely.
chunk some time to at least glance through what you have. So the sooner the better in general, I think. Yeah. But other than that, yeah, we are good. I think thanks everyone once again for joining us. I think the next session's on Friday. And remember to join us on Discord, like Shashank said, to keep the conversation going, I think. Yeah, yes, Discord's good for queries. Yeah.
Alrighty. That's it from us. Thank you so much. Looking forward to seeing you all on Friday and looking forward to seeing your responses much sooner, hopefully.
Yep, indeed. Good night, everybody. Thanks a
Good night.
ton.
Good night. And Mr. Karthik, I think we can like stop the stream as well on YouTube.
Correct.
I think we're good.
Yep, we are. We
All
could, I think, log off now. Yeah.
all
Thanks,
right.
Shashank.
Thank
Cheers.
you. See you. See you. Bye bye.
Bye.